Hi, Black career women. It's 8 o'clock here and the sun is already down. It's dark where we at, but welcome to our Google Hangout. I am excited tonight to talk about my favorite topic, which is discovering your strengths or focusing on your strengths. It's one of my favorite things to coach members in our network on, and then also talk about. I could talk about this topic a lot because I really believe in growing yourself through your strengths. So, a couple of things I want to talk about first is for those of you, hi ladies, who are viewing for the first time, if you're not a member, please join at bcwnetwork.com. If you have a Twitter account, follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Pinterest. We're all over the place. So just make sure that you follow us and become a member of the network so you can be involved in Google Hangouts like this. I want to first talk about strengths in terms of what are they. I know that people have heard this term before in terms of working in your strengths. What does it mean? I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And some people discover those things by accident. Some statistics that I found for some research that I've done, specifically so I can share with everybody in the network, is, people who have an opportunity to work in their gifts are 6 times more likely to be engaged in their job. They're 3 times more likely to report having a better quality of life. But before we get into that, I want to know who's all out there. Tell me type it in our question and answers on the chat box and tell me where are you ladies at? Who's here in Cincinnati? Who's in LA? Who's in Texas? I'd like to know where you guys are. I want to share a story first about me and how I was able to discover my strengths. I was taking a class and the class was going to be pretty easy because I have a background in HR. So I thought I'll just take this class and it'll be easy class for me to get through. Oh, we've got a question. So we'll just wait a minute. I have someone here who says, I'm a graduate student working on a master's in healthcare administration. The problem is I no longer see healthcare as a passion. I have always had a passion for health promotion and fitness. Do you have any questions or suggestions on where to start? Well, let's talk about that. So, Arika Luke, thanks for the question. You guys were already jumping in. I don't have no time to talk about my story, but that's good. I love it. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Well, Arika, first of all, one of the things that I want to talk about in terms of growing in your strengths is that you have to be aware of who you are. So the first step in discovering your strengths is self-awareness, which means that you need to step back and reflect first, okay? What is it that you can build on? What is it that brings you the most fire in your belly when you do the work? What task is that? And yes, we can sometimes burn out from what we're currently doing, but we all have been blessed with more than one talent and strength. So it's best to discover what is that? What pieces of the job do you love? What pieces of the job still brings that fire in your belly? And what pieces of the job that maybe you don't like, which is probably because it's a weakness. And we're going to talk about managing your weaknesses in a moment. But Arika, I would suggest that you start with kind of dissecting where you are currently, finding out what pieces of the job that you love that brings you the most energy, that makes you feel alive, and focus on those things because more than likely, that's probably where your talent and skill is, and see how you can take that talent and skill and focus on that, hone in on those skills, develop them, and then try to make a transition into another career, another field. And then we have Venice on the line. Venice is actually a career transition personal branding coach in San Francisco, and she's on the line. Venice, shoot a question out to us and see if you have any suggestions for Ms. Leek as well, because she's tired of what she's currently doing. But let's talk about that because that's a good question that she brings up. There's 3 types of tools that can help you in terms of identifying your talents, your gifts, and your skills. But let's back it up first. Let's back this up. Hi, Makita. Makita's in the house. Hi, Makita. All right. want to back up to the story of how I discovered strength-based, coaching, strength-based career management. And I was taking this class in HR, which I really didn't need. And they said, well, okay, Sherry, well, you're going to have to take this strength finder assessment. And I thought, oh God, that's another career assessment. I don't want this crap. I'll just take it because I have to. And when I had taken the assessment, it gave me my top 5 strengths. And then each person went over it. And each person went over their top 5 strengths in the classroom, and the instructor went over them with you. And I was amazed. I learned so much about myself, not in this way that I didn't know, but it was confirmation of the things I felt about some of the challenges I was having in my career, and why I always felt like I was like this round peg trying to go into this square hole, and it wasn't fitting. But what I realized about myself is that I had the abilities and the skills and the talents all along. I just was not aware of what I had. I really didn't recognize what it was. I knew something was there in terms of my talent and skills, but wasn't given the opportunity to really work and hone on and mastering those skill sets so I could be working in my strengths. And a lot of times we come across our strengths by accident. The one thing that, if you don't get anything else out of this hangout tonight, the main thing that you need to think about is following your instinct, your gut. We all are naturally drawn to a certain type of position. It's our responsibility to discover if the talents that we have within us is that we are using them in the right role, which means it goes back to self-awareness. Are you accepting this position? Are you working in this job for the right reasons? If you're doing it for money and you really don't like the job, you're probably not working in your talents and skills, or your talents and your gifts, or your strengths, should I say. But so you need to be aware of that. And Arika, thank you. You're in Augusta, Georgia. All right, girl. Down south. So what I recognize in terms of discovering with your strengths, there's a couple ways you can do that. But let's first talk about self-awareness, reflection, how to, if you're someone who is looking to transition into another job, if you have someone who's looking to recreate their career completely, maybe do a whole overhaul, or maybe build on, maybe you're in the industry that you want to work in, maybe the job you have is a dream job, but how are you going to increase strengthen the strengths you already have? So there's a couple of ways you can do that. But back to the 3 tools that understand your natural talents, things that you can also learn. And there's a difference between the two. There's a difference between strengths, talents, and skills. Does anybody out there want to answer that? What's the difference between strengths, talents, and skills? What do you think? Because there is a difference. For strengths are something that you have an innate ability. It's something that's naturally within you. Okay, so it's something that you don't go out and train for. It's something that you don't go after been doing it for 10 years and now you're just, you have perfection in it. A strength is something that you have the innate natural ability to do. And, and I'm sure you all have had one of those moments where someone has said, oh my gosh, you do that so well, and you learn how to do it the first time around. Well, you learn how to do it the first time around because that's when you have a natural skill. I'll use this for an example. When I was in 10th grade, I wanted to take a sewing class so bad. And I knew that I had this passion for sewing. And I made this dress, and I didn't wait for all the instructions from my teacher to make this dress. I made this dress on my own, didn't follow her directions, and it was a work. But I had a natural ability to read the patterns and do the measurements and cut. And so I didn't have to wait for her guidance to show me what to do because I had an instinctive innate ability to do that naturally. Well, when it was time to grade the dress, I was so proud of myself and was thinking, okay, I'm gonna get an A on this dress because, I got skills. I can do this. And she gave me a C. I was so upset. But the reason why she gave me a C is because I did not follow her instructions, or I didn't wait for her assistance to help me guide me through to make this dress. So when you have a natural skill at something, you don't need a lot of direction to do what you already naturally know how to do. But if you have a manager that you're working for who wants to be able to control that piece, you're going to have conflict. The problem is that when you have a manager who doesn't recognize that you don't need that kind of direction, and that this is a strength that you have to where you can work with no supervision to get it done, instead of just allowing that gift to transpire and form within that role, that's where you bump heads with the control. So the strength is something you innate already have within yourself. And again, a way you can recognize that is by whether it is a hobby that you do or a specific task at work, anything that you feel there's fire in your belly and you automatically get it and you do it seamlessly, flawlessly, without minimum effort to get that done, and the work comes out exceptionally great, that is your strength. Talent is a little different because talent is also a natural type of thing, but it's a reoccurring pattern of thoughts and feelings, which means that for a talent, it needs to be developed in a way. So for someone who says, mommy, your daughter or your son or whomever, relative says, I want to take up dancing and, or I want to learn how to, do ballet. Okay. They may be very limber, flexible, very open to learning that style of dance. But in order to be a great, ballerina, it takes practice, and you have to have a limber body and very athletic and very strong in order to be a ballerina. So not necessarily is being a ballerina a natural talent. It can be something that you may have a natural ability drawn to in terms of wanting to do, and you may have that certain aspects of what it takes to be a ballerina is what's going to make you a good ballerina. So that's a little bit different because there's thoughts and feelings that go into the talent piece. Someone who can naturally sing, they still may need vocal lessons to perfect the voice, especially if they have a challenge of working in different keys. So it just depends on, really what the talent is. And it's still our responsibility to have that self-awareness at all times about what we're drawn to in terms of our skills, because there must be something there. But you have to be doing it for the right reasons. If you're, again, and you're probably going to hear me say this a bunch of times throughout the hangout, if you're drawn to a certain type of career because of the money, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got the talent for it. Or if it's even one of you that you're working in your strengths, you just want it because it's big, it can make you good big bucks and pay the bills. I'm not saying working in your strengths can't pay the bills. What I'm saying is that in order for you to have that career, job satisfaction, fulfillment, you need to be working in your strengths. Last one is the second one, should I say, is knowledge. And knowledge is something that is learned. And, we use knowledge as like the thing of wisdom with life, with our careers. Overall, it's all about the knowledge. And the knowledge is something that is factual. It's something that you learn. You've experienced it and you've learned from that. So even with your strengths, you have this innate natural ability to do something, or whatever that strength may be. And it may not be something tangible. It just could be a specific gift. You may be a very strong communicator. It just depends on what that is. But the knowledge piece is important, and it goes along with the skills. Now, skills is something that everybody can obtain. We all have them. We type, we use a computer, we know how to use our mobile phones. If we work in an office setting, a lot of us may know how to work Office, Microsoft Word, Excel, whatever the case may be. Some of us may be stronger at one application than another. But skills are something that we acquire through learning and practice, repetition, activities that we do. We all know what skills are. But what comes into play and what makes these three important is that when you have your talents, your knowledge, and your skills, all three of those together really is a strength. If that makes sense. Your talent, your knowledge, and your skills, all three of those together are a strength. So look at what is it about you because we all have special, unique gifts about us that make us who we are. Okay. Now in the workplace, our managers, a lot of times you got managers, and I'm going to say this, and Venice, if you're on here, please type a question answer when I say this, if you're still on. My personal opinion, probably 80% of managers or higher really do not focus on the strengths that their subordinates bring within the positions. Okay. There's just a lot of managers who don't develop their people. And so you have a lot of them always focusing on the weaknesses. Okay. You need to focus on this. You need to work on this. I need you to work on that. Instead of allowing that person to develop in the strength that they have, they focus on the weakness. Now, here's the problem with weaknesses. Okay. The problem with weaknesses is this. You're never going to stop having the weakness. It's not going to go away. It's not going to go away. You can manage it, but it's not going to go away. So if you are in a position right now, somebody out there who was watching, if you're like, you know what, I'm so sick and tired of my manager telling me about what I need to work on, instead of talking about and discovering what is strong about you, what you do bring to the position, or if it's not a good fit, working you somewhere else, or if you know it's not a good fit, then you need to move on. But you need to work with them and have them understand that, managing a weakness is the only way that you're going to minimize that. You can't just change a weakness into a strength. It doesn't work like that. And that's something that I learned. And when I had my Strengths Finder assessment done, I remember having this whole sigh of relief come off of my back, because for many years, because I had so many managers trying to make me change and try to improve my weaknesses, I felt like a failure. I felt like I'm not going to get these things right. But what I didn't realize was two things. If you are constantly in a role where you are constantly looking at trying to fix the flaws, you might not be in the right position. So sometimes it's not about burnout. It's about, are you really working in your true strengths? How are you going to discover what those are? But first, managing the weaknesses helps to eliminate some of that. And first, you have to be aware of the weakness, number one. If you're aware of the weakness, the second thing to do is to find out, how can I minimize and manage the weakness? Now, I don't know how many leaders we have on the Hangout right now, but leaders do this all the time. They delegate the work. They have the people who have the strengths in the areas that they're weak do the jobs. And that is how they're able to not only make themselves look good, but be able to also meet whatever the company's objectives are. So for someone who may not be in a leadership role, look at whoever's ever on your team. You guys get together and find out, do they have areas that they're strong in that I'm weak, and vice versa, and see if we can build this alliance with each other and play off each other's skill sets to achieve the common goal, which is whatever the company's initiatives are. Hi, Whitney. I got your question here. Whitney White, she's our social media manager here in our Cincinnati network. She's asking, what is, girl, how'd you type this? So what if you have a manager that does not provide feedback about your strengths and weaknesses despite requests to gain feedback? It's a very good question. More than likely, there's a lot of you out there who can identify with this, okay? Yeah, you do. Some companies or Fortune 500 companies may have the, 360 performance ratings and all that good stuff, and they may get what they need. But if you're working for smaller organizations who may not invest in performance from that standpoint, then it's still your responsibility to work on that. Whitney, what I was going to suggest is that take the strengthfinder.com assessment, and then you and I can work one-on-one to open up what your strengths and weaknesses are. And that will help you to gain where you are. Now, that doesn't mean that you can take this assessment and take it back to your manager and say, hey, I took this assessment with my top 5 strengths, and this is what I've discovered, about myself. And share that assessment with your manager, and it can help them to get to to get to know more of your strengths and abilities, and ask them, how can we utilize my strengths within this role so I can be performing at my maximum level, and then also giving you what you need is to meet our company initiatives. But you have to know what kind of manager you are. If your manager is open to sitting down with you and going over your top 5 strengths and asking and seeing how you guys can implement your strengths into what you currently do, or maybe identify some areas where you're already using your strengths and honing more into using those strengths, and then finding ways to manage the weaknesses instead of asking them to help you to change the weaknesses, because that's not going to work. But you've got to know what kind of manager you have, because not all managers are going to be open and approachable to that, to coming to them with that idea or that method. But I think it's something that a lot of you that are viewing can do. Take the Strength Finder assessment. You can, going over that, you can take it back to your manager and say, hey, I just recognized a few things about myself. I'm doing these are some of my top strengths. Some of these things I do great in my job. Others I would love to be able to implement into what I'm doing. Let's see how effective it will make me be by my next performance review. Hi, Belle. Belle just came in from Northern Virginia. Glad to have you. Now, Whitney, that was a good question. Very good question, because the one thing about your strengths is that and again, this goes back to using your strengths and you developing an opportunity to stay alert. I mean, trying to say an opportunity for you to incorporate the strengths into your performance. You don't have to wait for your manager to be great at what you do. But what you do is hone in on those strengths, because those will tell you who you are. And that way you can be working to the maximum performance ability that you have and love what you're doing. Not, I got to get up and go to work. I'm tired. Do I have to go do this? Because if you're more than likely, you are not using your strengths if you're going to work with the following 3. Okay. If you dread going to work. Okay. We all have our reasons for why we may not want to go. It may not be that we're not working in our strengths. It could be because we have a bad boss or the environment sucks, But if part of that is that that you're not working in your strengths, then absolutely you probably need to look at discovering what those are. Or if you know what those are, start making better career choices to do so. The next one is, if you have a negative attitude and your energy is not positive in the workplace, your interactions with your colleagues are horrible, look at yourself. Find out what's really going on. If you're miserable with doing the task of your job itself, look and see if you're really working in your strengths. You'll be amazed at, again, it goes back to the choices that you're making in terms of, are you there for the money? Are you there because you have to pay the bills? Or, ask yourself, what reason have I really chosen this role? Because making career decisions is important. We don't have time to waste. The older you get, you better make sure you're in the right job. And so it's important to understand that honing in on what those gifts and talents are huge. You could build a career in such a short period of time if you are working in your strengths. Reflecting back on some of the things that I had done in my career, it makes so much sense now. And if anybody is viewing, can you type in the box and ask me who's taken the Strength Finder assessment before? Just type it in. And in the meantime, I'm going to answer Whitney's question. Whitney states, how do you prevent your strengths from becoming buried in your work? Well, that's a good question. It's a very good question. How that happens, because we all have heavy workloads, and especially for you millennials who are maybe still very new at developing your career, the one thing I'm going to tell you is that you can read that job description posted on Career Builder all day long, but more than likely, you're going to be doing a lot more than what that job description describes. So, you have to look at, that's part of time management, and time management can be a weakness for some people. So that is something that time management is, can be, again, managing it. Doesn't mean you're going to overcome it, but you can also get someone to support you in that who's good at time management to help you to develop that. So I'm just using it as an example. I'm not saying Whitney has a problem with time management. I'm using it as an example. But how you prevent your stress from becoming buried in your work, Whitney, honestly, is that you're going to have to manage your workload, because it's important for you to do that. But if you sit down and talk to your manager, try to find a way to develop your strengths within and find opportunities to incorporate your strengths into your performance at work and share that with your manager, you probably will get a lot more support from he or she by sharing that and saying, it's so important for me to develop my strengths within this role, because that's how you're going to get the maximized performance out of me, because I'm working in my natural abilities. And then say, I got to find a way to manage my weaknesses. But the thing is, Whitney, don't look at your strengths as a task. Your strengths is something you naturally do. For example, you're an awesome writer. You're a very talented, you're a gifted writer. That's one of your strengths. So you have to look at that as, maybe your strength is writing, but maybe you're buried in a lot of writing. And if you're buried in a lot of writing, even though it's what you love to do, you don't look at it as being overwhelmed, but you do need to look at, how am I going to manage all these projects and get things done? And if that is an area where you're weak, you need to find someone who can help or complement you to help to manage that. Because that's really what it is about. Is never be afraid to ask for help when it comes to your weaknesses. But, one of the key things to using your strengths in the workplace is you've got to find a way to incorporate them into your performance. But you need to recognize what those are first before you can even do that. All right. Thanks for that question, Whitney. I appreciate that. All right. If anyone has I haven't had anyone who has replied and said they've taken the Strength Finder assessment, so I'm going to assume that either no one's familiar with it, or they haven't taken it before. So the one thing I want to say is that we are going to be implementing the Strength Finder assessment into what we do here at Black Career Women's Network, because I truly believe in women honing in on their strengths and ability to do just that. So one of the things I want to share with some of the ladies is that how I was able to make the transition. And to me, I think this is a good way or a good example of how you can kind of think about and get the wheels turning about, am I really working in my strengths? So I go back to say I had taken the Strength Finder assessment. I was probably maybe about 8 or 9 months into my career transition. I transitioned from being an HR into being a career coach. And at the time I had taken the evaluation, I thought, okay, well, I'm seeing some of these strengths, but I'm not sure where I'm using them at. And then as I got into looking at the 10 different ways that I was actually using my strengths, some examples, then I realized that I was in the right career at this very moment, which is coaching. And my natural abilities and gifts from what I have come exactly from that. Now, had I taken that evaluation maybe 2 years ago, it would have told me I was definitely in the wrong job. And it made sense, because the job that I had, even though I love working with people, I wasn't able to touch them in a way that I'm able to work and help to develop and motivate people like I do now. So I didn't choose this career like I just went in the book and said, okay, Sherry, I think I'm going to choose coaching. When I discovered coaching, I discovered it by accident, but I just felt this fire in my belly, and I was so drawn to wanting to do this. And I just went off of instinct. So if you find that you are doing things instinctively, then you're more than likely working in a strength. If you're doing it instinctively, and if it gives you the most energy when you do it, you can do it all day long and never be tired. Then it's probably a strength. The Strength Finder assessment is actually, we all have 34 strengths. And what the Strength Finder test is, it gives you your top 5, and then you can get your other ones, like I think the top, the other 31 more, you have to pay extra for those. But you can look at those, and it gives you from your top number 1 down to number 34. So of course it goes into the order of the strength. So your top 5 are the ones that you probably use the most, without even recognizing that you do. But the thing is this: are you using those strengths at work, or are you using them in your personal life? And if you're using them in your personal life but not at work, you need to find a way to be able to have where you're using both, where you're using those gifts at the same time throughout your entire life. Because the Strength Finder is not just about being the best that you could be at work. It's also about how are you using those strengths and maximizing that in your life overall. So, for example, my top 5 strengths was maximizer, communication, strategic, ideation, and futuristic. And you're probably thinking, what the hell are those? But what I learned from those is that it helped me to understand that we all fall in about 4 categories. We're strategic thinkers, or either we're relationship builders, or we're leaders, or we're someone who really kind of has this whole analytical side. So, we fall in these 4 different categories within the Strength Finder assessment. And what I realized is that I was always someone that if I went to a meeting, they're sitting here talking about our plans, what we're doing for the quarter. I'm sitting here looking at the big picture and thinking, okay, how can we improve on this process and make it great? Or, looking at, okay, well, that can be 6 months down the road, that can be an issue. Where no one was really talking about the foresight of what could happen, positive or negative. I'm looking at making decisions, not for now, but making the decisions of how it's going to impact my role in the company 12 months from now. So that fell into my futuristic and my strategic part of me, and the maximizer too, because I don't like to just live in the moment. I like to say, okay, how is this going to impact me 12 months from now? So that was confirmation for me that, I was always one of those shoppers, and I still am, that I can go shopping and take me 5 hours because I need to go to every store before I make a final decision on one purchase. Because I want to make sure that I'm getting the most value for my dollar, or I'm not missing out on some sale. So I will go to 5 different places looking for the same thing to see if there's anything different. And so not everybody's like that. So that's something that I use for myself as part of my maximizing part of my personality. I use that in my personal life, where at work, I use it differently. I use the maximizer in terms of how can I get the most out of not necessarily the 8 hours of my day, but how can I get the most out of the work that I'm doing? Or if I'm coaching someone, how can I get the most out of them in terms of stretching them to see things differently, stretching them to build their confidence and say, have you thought about doing it this way? Instead of staying in the comfort zone, have you thought about going another route to get it done? So, you have to think about how those things are confirmation for who you are, but then also say, you know what, I'm going to experiment and hone it on this strength a little bit and see where it goes. So, someone who's out there, who's having a challenge right now, say, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. It may not, don't look at it as the career itself. Look at you. Look at your innate strengths and abilities, being aware and knowing who you are. Focus on those strengths, and that's how you create that job that not only do you want to do, provide for the rest of your life, but you may decide, I've been in nursing for 12 years and this ain't cutting it no more. And I'm finally coming to the realization I do want to do something different. I just don't know what that is. But if you hone on your strengths, that can help to guide you in that area. But I'm gonna tell you something for everybody who's on the call, right? I mean, on the hangout right now. More than likely, you already know what it is. You just need confirmation to help you have enough strength to move in that direction, or need guidance to say, okay, I get that. That is me. I haven't been working on that, but how can I work on that? And then what are going to be the next steps for me to get there? It's never too late to figure out what those strengths are and start using them. As long as you still have to work until you take your last breath, you can be working on those. You can be working on finding your strengths, because your strengths is where it's going to lead you to your purpose. I truly believe that our strengths are there in our lives to do that, to help to draw us to what our purpose is. And everyone has a purpose. Everyone has a unique talent. They have a unique gift that they can share with the world. But you have to know who you are, and you do have to discover what those strengths are. And you don't have to go through growing pains to do it. Not when you have an assessment like this one. The Strength Finder is one of my favorite. Where is my book? I thought I had my book. Here it is. This is the book. But they have they have others as well. I'm not endorsing them, but I do find this to be a very effective way to really look at what types of strengths that you have, and then honing in on that. So I started doing the working with another coach in terms of looking at me, because sometimes we don't see other people see things in us that we don't see in ourselves. So if the Strength Finder is something that you do want to take the assessment at their website, and you want to discover, what parts of yourself that you to see if you're already working in those strengths, or if you need to improve on that and learn how to, manage the weaknesses, then email me at, ssims@bcwnetwork.com. And we can work individually. I have a webinar coming up for a group session for the strengthfinder.com. So we can work on helping you guys discover what your true strengths are, and working in those talents. And then learning how to take and incorporate those into your performance if you aren't doing it already. And some of you will probably say, oh, Sherry, I'm doing this. I got this. I'm good. And if you are, that's great. Let's maximize it and see how we can take you from good to great with those strengths, but to take your career to the next level. And sometimes it may be, you may have these top 5 strengths, you may only be working in 2. And you need to kind of balance it out with the other 3. And then how are we going to do that? So that's something that we can work on as well. Cultivating your strengths is not as hard as you think it is, because it's already natural to you. You may be already doing it, so you may not think that it's not going to be work. When you're working in your strengths, it's not work. You're doing it for the labor of the love. We all have things that we hate to do. Okay, I just had a session with a lady who. I asked her what her strengths were. She couldn't tell me. Okay, that's fine. I can understand that. But when she told me that she was a leader and a manager, I said, okay, well, what kind of manager are you? She couldn't tell me what kind of manager she is. I said, so tell me about your family and what you guys do. She was able to tell me all about that, but she wasn't able to tell me who she was professionally. Using the Strength Finder can help you to define who you are as a professional. When you go to an employer, or if you're in front of someone and they ask you what your strengths are, you should be able to tell them what they are. When I was asked that question prior to taking the Strength Finder assessment, I said, things like, I'm resourceful, I collaborate well with others, I see the big picture, and I'm not competitive, but I do believe in meeting my goals. Okay, and that's fine. Only one of those really were working in my strength. I didn't recognize it at the time. But when you learn how to recognize your strengths and start working in those, you can answer that question in a completely different way. Completely different way. Your next question, if you ask it to me again and say, well, Sherry, tell me about your strengths. Well, I'm a maximizer. I'm someone who believes in looking at the big picture and how I can take a project that we have from good to great. I am very strategic in the way that I like to look at how can we maximize what we're doing now for a company, and meet the goals in half the time frame. I like to get to know people and size them up on my own without nobody else's opinion, So those are things that you want to give detail about when they say, tell me what your strengths are. Just don't name off this, and this. Tell them this is why this is a strength. Because I'm able to do that. I would tell people I'm approachable. I can build rapport with anyone. Well, how do you do that? Part of that is my communication and my strength, which I didn't realize I had. I can build a rapport with a lot of people and not really have that backlash when it comes to the workplace, because I believe in treating everyone the same. So that way no one can go around having this different experience with me. And so that's where that communication piece comes in terms of one of my strengths, giving examples of what those are. And that's very important, to be able to know who you are professionally. If you know who you are professionally, you make better career decisions in terms of accepting a job. We all want to get paid. We all want to get paid. But at the same time, we need to be making sure that we're working in our strengths when we do that. And not only that, but just making sure that it's a labor of love for you, and not just where you just, not necessarily clocking it out, but you're just going through the motions when you get to work every day. I don't care if you're making $10 an hour or if you're, with a six-figure salary. You can be unhappy in a six-figure salary as well. So it's all about, are you working in your true gifts, your talents, and your strengths? And that's really where that comes from. So skills are great because we learn skills on the job. And that's where, for example, a skill is when I started working, and then I started taking these office jobs back in my 20s, I could only type, it was like 25 words a minute. And then maybe about 5 years later, I had taken a typing test for an assignment, and I was typing double that speed. I was up to like 45, 50 words a minute. And I was like, oh, but that was a skill that I had acquired over time that I got better at because I was doing it all the time. So that's just an example of what it means to have a skill. It doesn't mean I have this natural talent at typing. I just know how to type fast because of the repetition. I've done it over the years. And of course, with computers coming out and laptops and all that good stuff back then, everything was going on, through the typing process, which helped to increase the skill. I don't think typing's a talent. I'm just using it to say that it's a skill that you can acquire through the practice of activities that you do. And that same thing goes for knowledge. But the thing is, talents, knowledge, and skill, again, is how you get that power in terms of knowing who you are professionally and working in your strengths, because working in your strengths is power. Working in your strengths is power. It's empowering to you. It's empowering to the employers as well. And sometimes we have to take back what we know to our manager and say, hey, this is what I want to maximize for myself so I can be the best employee that I can be. And the one thing I can say a lot is that, entrepreneurs and leaders, they have to do that a lot. They have to look at what they're strong in order for them to be able to maximize, their teams to be who's going to be effective in their roles. Now, do they use this based on the strengths? Not all the time they don't, but they should. And that's the one thing that I think that's missing a lot too from the support from managers, but it's still your responsibility to develop yourself. And I say that in pretty much every hangout we have, it's your responsibility to grow yourself. Any questions out there about, strengths and weaknesses? Anybody want to share any weaknesses they have? Any strengths that they recognize about themselves? Who's working in their purpose? Just because you're on this call doesn't mean you're not working in your purpose. Maybe you want to know something else. So waiting for some questions come through for that. In the meantime, one of the things I want to share with you as well is that when you are operating in the areas that are not strengths for you, don't beat yourself up, okay? Don't look at the fact, don't say I'm a failure because I can't overcome these weaknesses. You will never overcome your weaknesses. And I'm not talking about something that's, a skill type of weakness. Okay. Because I can tell you right now, if somebody hired me as an administrative assistant, they would fire me by lunchtime because I am not good at those types of tasks. I'm not good at those types of skills that are required for, administrative assistants, which is, attention to detail, and I multitask well. That's no problem. But some of the things that are required for administrative assistants to do, I'm not good at those things. And so, and I'll tell somebody in a heartbeat, don't put me at your front desk. No, I'm not. You can't hire me for your administrative assistant job because you will escort me to the door by noon. So as long as you are aware of what you know is not going to be a good fit for you, you can stay away from that. But for those of you who are in positions and you're constantly, badgered about working on your weaknesses, do not feel like a failure, because you're not a failure. Nobody is a failure. You're just in the wrong position. You're not using your strengths, and if you're able to incorporate them into your performance to help you to get better, then do that. But if you're not, then you really need to sit down and ask yourself, am I in the right position? And if I'm not, what am I going to do to get out of it? But look at yourself first. Do the work. As Oyana says, do the work. Do the work. And discovering what your strengths is the first start in doing the work to learning, who you are as a professional. And then what's awesome about it as well is, like, part of the times, again, I think I've already said this, you can be using these, in your life overall. Hi, Amber. Thank you for the question. Amber, where are you? Type in where you are too, so we can share with the ladies in the network. But Amber's question is, she said, so glad I made it in. Woo, we're glad you're here too. Performance management is something I want to work on. What are some tips for approaching my supervisor for a pre-performance meeting? Called by me. Great. Well, you definitely need to do your homework before you go in there. And you need to sit down and write out a list of what are your objectives. What is it that you want to cover? And you're going to need to make sure that you're not necessarily controlling the conversation, but that you let her know you do have an outline of everything that you want to cover, so you can make sure you keep her on task so you can get everything discussed that you want to. But if it's performance management, it's something you want to work on, I do recommend you taking the Strength Finder assessment first. And I'm going to tell you why. Because before you go in there, you want her to see that you have done the work. And the work is not to impress her. We don't care. The work actually is for you. It helps to make you stronger, build your confidence, and help you to carve out your direction that you want her to help you with in that company. So if you go in and say, you know what, these are the things that in performance management, I don't know specifically what it is that you're wanting to work on. I would have to know what those are to kind of guide you a little better. But I do think that taking the Strength Finder and getting your top 5 strengths will kind of help to, ground it, or maybe give you a little bit more of a skeleton for your outline of things you want to go in and talk about in approaching her for a pre-performance meeting. She'll probably be impressed with that. She may or may not know what, and I'm calling it a she, and it may not be. He or she may not even know what a Strength Finder assessment is, or they may. If they do, that's even better. But if they don't, then this is your opportunity to share with them that you've done that work, to say, hey, I took this assessment. These are my top 5 strengths. This is kind of where I know I'm already working in. This is where I like to kind of incorporate it into my performance, or look at it from a different perspective and work on that, and incorporate that into whatever you want the performance management to be. Because whatever task or whatever job that you do now, look at your strengths and see if you're doing those strengths within your role now. If you are, then you probably wouldn't be asking for a performance management meeting. So you got, if the weaknesses are there and that's what you're getting hammered on, then you need to go in and say, you know what, I can manage these the best I can. But if you want the maximum performance out of me, and I'm loving what I'm doing, then this is the areas I need to increase, and this is where I need to be working in. And But I would definitely need to talk to you more to find out specifically what are some of the things. But I definitely think that you definitely should take that assessment, and I can go over with you, and that way it can help prepare you for wanting to make that meeting. Because the more you go prepared, knowing your stuff, and this goes back to knowing who you are as a professional. Because if you don't know who you are as a professional, I mean, you're setting yourself up for you're not allowing yourself, you're not defining your own career path when you do that. You're just leaving your career out to the wolves. You have to know who you are as a professional and set those standards for yourself. So that way you'll know strategically which direction you want to go in. I got another question, Amber. Thank you. And she's in California, and you still got daylight, don't you? I have another question. She has another question here. It looks like she says, "Oh, are you a new employee in a government office? Is that what that says? Oh, you feel like you're not learning what you need to advance." Okay. If that's the case, then Amber, if you're not getting what you need to advance, it's going to be your responsibility to develop, but you still need to find out what your strengths are, because you may not be working in your strengths. Or if you are, you wouldn't probably be feeling this way. So something's missing, and it doesn't necessarily be the support of the manager. It could be that there's a disconnection and your gifts and talents in what you're working in now. And if it's an entry-level job and you have a lot higher skill level, your talents are going to call you to that. So that's probably why you're not learning, is because you're beneath where your talents are calling you to be. So you need to figure out what that is. Email me, ssims@bcwnetwork.com, and I'll talk to you a little bit more and give you some direction before you make that schedule that meeting with them. Lachey Scott, hi Lachey. Tell us where you are. Yeah, I want to know where you ladies are now. Lachey has a question also. And Lachey's question is, I'm a talent coordinator / HR generalist. Okay, that's my old world. In advertising industry. How do you measure your strengths against potential new opportunities when you might not be aware of everything that's needed in the role outside of what the job description? Well, Lachey, that one really, honestly, I don't care what job you take, there's going to be something in that role that may not be visible within that job description. I'm not saying it's going to be something completely significantly different, but there may be a specific task or a responsibility that's given to you that's not in, you're welcome, Amber. There may be a task or responsibility that may be given to you that may not be in your original job description that you're going to be required to do. So this goes back to knowing who you are as a professional, because if you know who you are as a professional and you're working in your strengths, that won't be a challenge for you. That won't be a challenge for you at all. So that's something, again, for you that's a disconnect. You need to look at discovering what your strengths are, recognizing, and you may recognize what those are within yourself, but you don't have a name for it. You don't have a name for it, or you're not seeing it. Sometimes it's about us seeing it on paper in front of us so we can recognize what that is. So that's what I recommend you do, is take the strength finder, look at your top 5, email me, call me. I'll go from with you. So that way you'll recognize, you need to know who you are. So if they start throwing stuff at you, you already know what you're capable of doing. You know your limitations, but you also know what you're going to excel in the best. And that's where, having that assessment will do that. It's life-changing, you guys. You may not think it is, but it really is, because it shows you overall what you need to be focusing on versus trying to get rid of those weaknesses. Is never going to go away. Like I told you, if you know what your weaknesses are, and we're not talking about, I don't like doing paperwork on my job. Come on now, people. Women, we know paperwork is a part of everybody's job, whether we like it or not, we got to do it. Besides, it's just a task. So more than likely, just do it. The make or break things are the things that the core pieces of your job, if you don't like doing those, are the ones that can be the most impactful. And that's what you need to think about in terms of the abilities is what's going to be, if I don't like doing this part of my job and it's a critical piece of what I do, yeah, I'm in the wrong role. And if you're doing it for money, which I say you should never do, but I know we got to pay the bills to eat, you need to think about that, because don't waste your time in something if you're not using your strengths and gifts to do that. It's when you're wasting your time, your energy, when you can be putting it into something that you love. And Lachey's in Cincinnati, where you at home. Okay, with me. Okay, make sure you email me or call me, and then I can help you. I can help you through that, because if that's a current situation going on with you now, you want to be prepared for that, because if you get blindsided, because there is a blind side to us not working in our strengths. That's part of those weaknesses pieces, that we have those blind spots that it could be kind of a underlying talent there that we haven't honed on yet, that could very well turn into a weakness if we don't recognize it and work on that too. So, but that's not going to be in your top 5. It may be in your top 10, or maybe in your top 15 of those ones that you can probably be borderline on the fence, being weak or strong, and depending on the circumstances, what type of job you're in, life situation, what have you. Okay, Amber, you said you missed something. Oh, you have missed it. I was in traffic. Is the Strength Finder a quiz online as well as a book you shared? Yeah, the Strength Finder is an assessment. You can go to Strength Finder, strengthfinder.com, and you can to find out what your top 5. Like, it just got dark on me here. There we go. You can find out what your top 5 are. You can get your top all 34. But it costs a little bit more to do that, to do the top 4. I mean, to do the 34. So just do your top 5, because that's really what people look at in terms of looking at what they can work on. But I will say that, you're welcome, Lachey. Just make sure you email or call me, and I'll be more than happy to work with you on that. I am very excited about implementing Strength Finders as a program that we'll be working with women on within the network. I'm very excited about that, because I think as women, especially Black women, the more we know who we are professionally, the better we are equipped to face the challenges that we face as Black women in the workplace. Because I say it to everybody all the time, our challenges and the things that we deal with in the workplace are so much different than other counterparts that we work with. So the more that we know who we are professionally, and I'm not talking about education, because having a degree is great, but your education does not equip you for working in your gifts and strengths if you don't know what those are, or if you don't know who you are professionally. So that's just part of the package of what it is to be, overall, a Black career woman, honestly. And then you need to know what those are. So I'm so excited about implementing this into our network, and we're going to be supporting women with the Strength Finder assessment individually, and then we're also going to be implementing some group webinars to where we can have multiple women on the webinars to share in terms of the gifts. So for you women out there who are like, okay, I'm gonna go take this assessment, and then when you get it and you're looking at everything, you're thinking, oh, okay, I kind of need to figure out, how this, plays up into what I'm doing. It's a little bit simpler than you think, but you can also work with myself in terms of, wanting to define and kind of looking at it from a broader perspective. And that's what I'm here for, is to be able to go over that with you and see how you are currently already using your strengths in your life, professionally and personally. And then if not, how can you incorporate doing so you can start maximizing and really benefiting from working in your strengths and start seeing those results, professionally in your job, or seeing those results, personally, in the workplace too. And when we get off the Google Hangout, if you guys don't take anything else away from this, please do not beat yourself up for the weaknesses that you have, because we all have them. Manage them, minimize them, Find people that you can work with in your teams that can help you to do a strong where you're weak, and vice versa. So this Google Hangout will be available on our YouTube page once it uploads after we're done. Any questions that you guys may have, you can email me at ssims@bcwnetwork.com if you guys are interested in taking the Strength Finder and wanting me to help you with your results and working through a plan to help you work in your purpose. And also too, tweet out to your friends about tonight's hangout. And if there's any questions you guys didn't get a chance to ask that you want to ask, again, email me, tweet me, Facebook, either one. I'll be more than happy to answer those. Our webinar for the strength-based support that we'll be providing for our members, we should have that. Look for an email blast to go out about the date that we're going to do the webinar, where we're going to strictly be talking about the specific strengths from your Strength Finder assessment that you take. So again, that's strengthfinder.com or gallupstrengthfinder.com is where you can take the assessment, and email me your top 5 so I can check them out and see how I can work with you in terms of discovering a new part of who you are that is already there. You just need to bring it out and learn to be more of who you are. That's what I always say. Learn to be more of who you are, and working in your strengths help you to learn more and be more of who you are. So we're going to tune now. It's 9:01. I've already went 1 minute past, but I want to leave you with this, you guys. I always tell all of my members in the network that I thank you guys for supporting what we do. We'll have another Google Hangout in about 2 weeks. And the one thing I want you guys to do is to know your worth, discover your strengths, and work in your purpose. Okay, until next week, if you guys have any questions, contact me. If not, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Have a good night.